Hey, what's happening, Smitty?
What's going on, Chad? How you been, man?
Oh, I'm well. It's nice to talk to you again, my old friend. How's the fisticuffs?
I know,
going
man.
for
It's man. It's been a while, right? It's been I think it's been 4 or 5 years since I've seen you and talked to you.
You know, anybody who doesn't know Ryan very well, they don't know that the camp he came from in Illinois is a bunch of guys training in the bottom of a record store with a bunch of mats. A long red-haired guy named Bob Long, who's about as true blue and badass as an individual can come. Bob stepped up and fought fights on no notice whatsoever just to do it. He's got a leg scissor that he can squeeze you and make you shit your pants. So Smitty comes from the real deal tribe back when people used to really fight and throwing fist fights meant something. So it's pretty cool stuff. I'm grateful to be here, Smitty. I love you, man. You're a great guy, and you're a true testament to what the warrior spirit of MMA is really all about.
Well, shit, I appreciate that, man. It's the same for you. Obviously, you've for people who don't know, man, you've been around for 20 years, and let's call it the fight game. I don't want to call it MMA with you, but NHB and shoot fighting and everything back in the day. And man, it's been almost 20 years for you now, right?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, we've been in this game a long time. You know, back when it was still called NHB, and we didn't wear gloves, and we didn't have rules, and we fight. And you know, Smitty, I remember fighting in a warehouse one time. We showed up, and I said, "Well, where's the ring at?" And the promoter. A guy who basically just did backyard fist fights and took bets on it said, "Oh, well, we're going to park these cars in the circle here." And I said, "You got a mat?" And he said, "Well, the concrete's soft today." Oh, okay, great. So we fought in a circle of cars. I saw a fight one time. I didn't fight in this one, but I saw a fight one time where it was in an old auditorium in Indianapolis, and basically the equivalent of a burned-out bomb shelter. And it had an old stage where they had probably done plays or something in high school. I don't really know. And they had a carpet, like old carpet padding rolled across the stage. And two of these guys were fighting, and they rolled off of it, and one of them smacked his head on the concrete and knocked himself out. So after that, we all kind of stood up to the front and held him in, you know, and that was the cage back then. So we've come a long way, baby, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's a crazy growth that we've had, with this sport now. You know, now that it is much more of a sport and not just fighting. And fuck the crazy part, man. It's evolved all the way from fighting, you know, like you're talking about, to into a sport, and then now fucking almost straight entertainment with like the UFC and some of these promotions, man. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is how much of this modern MMA do you watch, man? How much of the UFC, are you following closely still? Do you watch a lot, anything like that?
Well, here's the thing, Smitty. I absorbed every single fight from 1993 until 2010 that you could possibly watch. I consumed everything. I was the guy who had VCR tapes of old King of the Cage, and, I had everything. So I was what some people would consider a fight aficionado back in the day, and we usually just call them, fight geeks. So, I watched everything. Well, something happened in 2005 after the Tough thing happened, and, we call it the MMA boom in the business for those out there listening that don't know what that is. The MMA boom was after 2005. Every dork on the planet had an Affliction T-shirt on, and they, suddenly everybody you ran into would say, "Hey, do you UFC?" And stupid shit like that, and people that were in the community, in the fight world, we kind of made fun of those kind of people, and maybe that was kind of an asshole thing to do, because you know what? We're glad they came in. Those people are the ones who made the sport, not us. We gave the sport legs. We built a foundation for it, and they gave us wings to take off and fly. Because, without those people, MMA would be dead. It would not have made it. We had to find a way to reach mass appeal, and the only way to do that was to become commercial. And, it's kind of like punk rock. People say punk's dead and all that stuff, and punk's been dead since the Ramones and the Sex Pistols did it, and after that it was done. Well, that's not really true, is it? Because the punk rock and MMA are really analogous of one another. And when you look at the core of what MMA is today, It's the same core that a lot of your punk bands, you know, your Green Days, and people call it punk light or pop punk. MMA is kind of pop punk, to be analogous with that, with that comparison. But do I think that MMA is as good as it used to be? Certainly not. But I think it's going in the right direction, and you hit it right on the head when you said entertainment rather than sport. Now, if you look at boxing, boxing is not really a sport any longer. It's two guys prize fighting. There's a sport of boxing, and it's called the Olympics, you know, and Golden Gloves. But the real money and the fun and the interest in boxing is seeing Floyd Mayweather finally get beat. You know, whenever that happens, you know, it was Mike Tyson in his heyday being the most feared man on the planet, and then after that, biting Evander Holyfield's ear off. You know, that is entertainment. So the closer MMA gets to professional wrestling and boxing, the better off it will be, the more it will sell. And what I've always said, and I hate to give away my promoter's secrets, because pretty much whatever I've ever done, everybody puts down and screams about and tells me how bad I am for the sport, and then they run and do it. And then they find out how hard it really is and how fun it isn't, and they do 2 or 3 shows and they quit. But the fact is that the more entertainment-based this is, the more it matters to the outside world. And what I mean by that is we have to focus as promoters, as trainers, as MMA fighters. All the focus does not need to be on people who love MMA. Quite the contrary. The focus needs to be on people who know nothing about MMA. Let's bring them in and let them see this. Do you remember when Dana White used to say, right before Tough came out, he would say, if we could just get this on TV one time, I know everyone would understand this then. And it's the same thing now. If we could just get this in front of people that have never seen it, they'd understand it, and they'd go crazy for it when they see Conor McGregor talk on the microphone. When they see Ronda Rousey on a commercial. You know, Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey are the most important fighters in the business right now. And I'll say this, Chael Sonnen is probably the 3rd most important person right now in the sport. I got a funny story about Chael. You want to hear one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is the God's honest truth. I was in Trenton, New Jersey. We were on the Pike. I was turning off. I was driving the van, actually. We were going to get medicals done for everybody for a BODOGFight we were having, and I was heavily involved in BODOG back then. And Chow had just started with BODOG. I think he'd done 1 or 2 fights at that point, so this was his 2nd or 3rd fight with BODOG. And we're driving down the road, and you know, by this time the boom had happened and all of that stuff, so MMA was what people thought was mainstream and popular. There was nothing even close to mainstream yet, but they believed we were, looking from the outside in. And we were all having a conversation about how big it's gotten, and I said the only way MMA is going to work, the only way that BODOG is going to last, is if every fighter in this vehicle right now, and I had a 16-passenger van that was max full, if every fighter in this vehicle steps up and develops characters, and they start to learn to do scripting, and they start to learn to talk on the microphone and do interviews that matter. Rather than talk about fights, you need to talk about, you know, fighting with your sister, and, you know, put some personality into it. Tell them about your first fist fight rather than about your first MMA fight, because that's what turns people on that don't know about MMA. And I said, the closer we get to the WWE and that sort of theatrics and that sort of dramaturgic effect, the better off we'll be, and BODOG will take over, because we have $9.4 billion behind this particular group. BODOG had Calvin Air behind it. The Fertitta, Calvin could have brought the Fertitta brothers 3 times. And Fertittas were hemorrhaging money. They were really tired of spending money, you know. So when Tough happened, Tough was their last thing, and they were going to get out. So Chael Sonnen says to me, he sat in the back and I sat in the front. I was driving, keep in mind. And Chael Sonnen says to me, that's ridiculous. We need to stay as far away from the WWE and those kind of antics as we can. That will give us a scar and a bad name and blah, blah, blah. fast forward 2.5 years, Chael Sonnen is selling more pay-per-views than anyone else doing what? His Ric Flair impression. That's a fact.
Yep.
That happened. So, you know, people
awesome,
may not
man.
like what I have to say, Smitty, but I always tell the truth. And, boy, the truth sometimes rubs people raw and they call it a lie.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Just a little lesson
man.
to be learned, you know?
No, for sure, dude. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here, man. Is I know you have no problem ever telling the truth. You know, if it offends somebody, that's their issue. You know, I'm the same type of person, man. I tell people what I think, and I tell people how I think it. You know, and if they don't like that, I just don't believe that's my problem. But
you know, Smitty, have you seen? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, switching up gears, Chad. So people don't know as well. You've promoted over 50 events, primarily as Cage Rage USA in Indiana, which I fought for.
I've done more than that. I've probably done 300 events.
Have you really
I've probably done closer to 300 events over, you know, pushing 20 years now. Not quite. Well,
20 years, yeah, nice, man.
98, I guess, is when we technically started. We didn't do Cage Rage and have an incorporated name and all that stuff and own the rights to it until 2000. July of 2000, I think, is when we did our first professional event where we charged people the same, you know, where we charged different amounts of money for people to get in and set in different seating, and we had a nice venue and all that. But, yeah, we were toying around with it since 99, and even then, the moment we saw the UFC in 93, we all kind of laughed and said, you know, hell, we do that every night when we're partying. You know, everybody gets in a big fight, and you have these giant fist fights in the middle of parties, and then everybody laughs about it and goes and drinks more beer, drops acid or whatever, you know. You know, that was our teens and 20s, and it was a different time, folks. You know, the thing is this, Smitty, I'm working on new things right now, and I can't drop the bomb on what I'm going to do yet because inevitably if I do this, if I say, hey, I'm going to do A, then tomorrow you're going to hear 1,000 people talking crap about it and how terrible it is and it's bad for the sport. And by next Friday, you're going to have everybody in the world trying to do it. You know, what has always gotten me further than everybody else in this industry is creativity. I came up in north central Indiana, and if you know anything about this region, there's nothing here. And so in some ways that worked well for me because there's nothing to do. Anything is something to do, and people flock to it. On the other hand, it never allowed me to get the full audience that I needed to break in really big and be large. Right before the MMA boom happened, we were doing regional shows where we were doing Chicago, and technically we couldn't do Chicago. We were doing Hammond and stuff like that because Illinois was still closed at that point for business. We were venturing up into Fort Wayne, and then we were going into Ohio a little bit, which was technically not exactly legal. We were in Tennessee and Kentucky, and we'd really spread our wings, and we were starting to really flow. And then the MMA boom started, and everybody with a swinging dick decided that they knew how to promote, and they were going to show me how to do it. Well, you know, by that time, Smitty, I'd been doing it several years, and I'd done 100 shows. And I knew how fun it wasn't, and I know how hard this stuff is. And if nobody's ever done this, you do not know stress. I swear to you, you do not know what real stress is until it's Saturday night, 7 people that were your main event fighters have dropped, and you've got 7 fights that you need to fill, and you've only got a 9-fight ticket. And you've got to fill those, and you've got 3,000 people standing outside the door ready to get in that already bought tickets. Now, when you can fill fights like that, then you can call yourself a matchmaker, promoter extraordinaire. Until you've done that, you don't know shit about this business. You know, it's the same thing with fighters. Smitty, there are all these tough guys nowadays, and I know you've been the victim of this. You've come to my show to fight, to Cage Rage to fight, shown up, had your opponent walk in and look at you and say, I think I've got a cold all of a sudden. You know, so you know that. Man. Well, these fighters nowadays, they don't understand what you sacrificed so that they could be a fighter today and pretend like they're a tough guy. You know, there's a lot more to fighting than spending every hour in the gym. on Facebook a couple of nights ago, and they were talking about this guy, and I'm not going to mention his name on here, but they were talking about this guy, and he must have a really shitty record. You know, he's probably had 30 fights, and he's won 5 or something like that. You know, fight anybody, anytime, anywhere for $500 kind of thing. And you know what?
Yeah.
All the MMA snobs and the aficionados out there that think they know everything, they condemn that guy, and they put him down and say, you need to train, and you give us a bad name. You know what? I think that guy gives us the best name because he tells what a fist fight is really about, a fight. Chael Sonnen, speak of the devil, was just saying on Bellator last weekend, and he said it again on one of his interviews on, I don't know, a YouTube interview I caught or something. He's a fascinating character. He said, you know, we fought. We didn't ask people who we were fighting. We signed the paper. We showed up, put somebody in the other corner, and let me fight. Now, I'm not saying that's the smartest way to do things if you want to have a spotless record, but don't pretend that you're there to be a real fighter when all you're really there to do is make sure you get a W so you can move on and get a bigger contract. And unfortunately, that's what the UFC's done. They've made it so that fighters are dependent on a contract and a win. And what happens when that happens is the fans suffer from it because you get two guys doing a glorified sparring match trying not to lose. I did a UFC analysis a couple of months ago, and I watched the UFC for 5 or 6 times, which basically means, you know, I watched them for a week and a half because there's a fight on every night with the UFC label. And the thing that I found that was most disturbing was that for that line of shows, and it's been a couple months ago, I can't point it out exactly, but for that line of shows, statistical analysis showed that 78% of the fights went to a judge's decision. 78% went to the judge's decision. Of those 78, I don't recall the exact numbers now, but a high percentage of them didn't even have a knockdown, and a higher percentage didn't even go to the ground at all. And that's because they're having sparring matches because they're so dependent on making sure they get that one win to keep their contract that the fans suffer and they lose. And I promise you this, Smitty, when you come to my shows and you see my new event that's coming up, you're not going to see that because it's going to be set so that fighters go out and the better they perform and the more fans cheer, the faster they come back and the more money they make. It's not about winning or losing. It's about entertaining fans. That's what put asses in seats then, and it's what will put asses in seats now. Can you talk on a microphone? Can you win fans' hearts? Can you show them that your heart is bigger than anybody else's in there, and your fists will do the rest? If you can do that, you're going to be a superstar. If you can't, you're never going to be. I don't care how long you train. Is that a fact, Smitty?
Dude, absolutely it is, man. You know, and to be real honest, man, that Bob and I always talk about the old cage rage days. You know, we were literally going over to Indiana once a month or even 2 or 3 times a month sometimes to go to one of your shows. And, you know, to be honest, man, looking back at it now, no shit, man, those are probably the funnest events I ever had a chance to go to, corner at, fight at, whatever. You know, it literally is because there were so many different types of guys and they're fighting. So many different fights on any given night. And not only that, man, but like you said, being in the middle of nowhere in Indiana like that, you saw some crazy shit go down at your show sometimes. You know what I mean? It was fucking
Absolutely.
awesome, though, man.
Do you remember when we did the show on we did the show at a little place called Mama Connie's? There's a kind of an amusement park place in north central Indiana, a town called Monticello. And they have a pond or a lake there called Lake Freeman, and they built an amusement park called Indiana Beach there, and people flock in from Chicago and you know, Michigan and all over the place to come and hang out at Indiana Beach and ride roller coasters and, you know, boating and get jet skiing and all that. Well, I did several fights there, but I did a fight there, and the second time I did it there, I found this little bar right off of the lake called Mama Connie's. And then behind this bar, they had a decent-sized sand volleyball court all fenced in with, 15 feet high fences and like a net over the top of it. And I said, oh, yeah, we can do this. So we called it flip-flops and bikini tops. And everybody that walked in, every girl that walked in, if she had a bikini top on, we gave her a Hawaiian lei. And every guy that walked in, if he had flip-flops on, we gave him beads. And you know what you do with lays and beads when you get wild? You know, the girls show their tits and the guys throw the beads, right? We did a bikini contest. It's the only time I ever did a bikini contest. And Big Papa Schnocky, rest in peace, my brother. I love you so much. Big Papa Schnocky was doing the announcing. He showed up in a Hawaiian shirt, a pair of sunglasses, and a kilt. And he was barefooted in the cage announcing. And, you know, there's sand getting drug into the cage. It wasn't the cleanest thing in the world, but it was a lot of fun. And at the intermission, we did a bikini contest. And, God, one of Duneland Valley 2-Do's guys, I can't remember his name, but he brought 3 girls with him that were strippers for that show. And we had girls gone wild in the audience. It's the only fight event I've ever been to where there were girls completely, and I mean completely, naked in the cage and in the audience. We packed 1,000 people into that little tiny patio back there. It probably didn't legally hold 300. We had 1,000 people in there when we lost track of counting. The bar owner, his name was Frank, he said, Cadillac, I don't know how you do it, but you gotta keep doing it, baby, because that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. I used to fly guys in from all over the planet to see my shows because I would tell them, you don't know MMA until you've been to Cage Rage because it's something different. It's a different animal. You know, I worked all over the planet from Russia to Panama to Canada to you name it, everywhere. I was everywhere. And people would fly into my shows and they would say, I don't know how you do it, but this is the most fun I've ever had at a show. So you saying that reinforces the idea that I was doing the right thing. And we're going to do more of it, Smitty, and we're going to do a lot more. We're getting ready to revamp Cage Rage, and we're going to do something else that's even bigger than that. And when I release this, unfortunately, we have to wait until January. But January 15th-ish, I suppose, is when we'll do the actual launch to it. And when we do, it's going to turn not just the world of MMA, but the entire sports world, Olympics, everything, amateur and professional, all sports, all entertainment, film, reality television, sports, cage fighting, boxing, everything. It's going to turn everything on its head, and it's going to be a complete wake-up call politically, introspectively, internationally, nationally. Everyone is going to know the name of this organization when we do it, and everyone's going to freak out, and it's going to change everything, and hopefully for the better. If not for the better, at least it'll shake it up so much that people are going to spend an awful lot of money watching it for a long time, you know? And that's what I'm about.
Hell yeah, man.
I want to do stuff where I make a legacy. You know, I've always said, shallow men think about tomorrow, big men think about next year, and great men think about their legacy. And I'm not saying I'm a great man by any means. I'm about as much of a fuck-up putz as you can get. But at the same time, I'm a creative guy. I love to do things that matter and that change things. And you know, hopefully along the way, we're able to give a lot of money to charities again. It's not something we advertised back when we were doing Cage Rage, but a little-known fact is that in Cage Rage, we went from town to town, and we did a lot of small shows in small towns. And by small shows, I mean 1,500 to 2,000 people. Today, these big shows, if they get 900 people, it's a success, you know? And I'm thinking, man, I wouldn't take on that kind of stress for 900 people. That's insane. I would get 1,500 people and be like, oh, my God, my empire's crumbling. You know, it's just, I can't believe people do it today, but they don't know how to promote. All they know how to do is put 2 guys in a cage and let them fist fight with the lights on, and it looks like shit, and it's boring, and the ticket sales reflect it. So we're going to do something different again, and we're going to change the world again. And by the way, I am going to do another Monster Mash, and anybody who's ever been to a Cage Rage Monster Mash knows that's the greatest costume party that's ever existed.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, have I been talking too much, Smitty? Guilty.
No, you're fine. I'm listening, brother. It's interesting. Everybody likes to hear this.
You ever known me to talk too much?
No, never, man. Dude, quite literally, Monster Mash are some of my favorite memories from fights too, man. It's nothing like being in a cage fight and having fucking 2,000 people fucking dressed up as crazy ass shit watching you fight, man. It's something else, man. Just having a bunch of freaks and geeks running around and costumes and shit. You know, it's a good time, man. Hey, man,
yeah, not just the fans, fighters, judges, referees. But I dressed up. You know, the promoter, everybody dresses. Everybody comes in costume. We did sexiest girl, scariest kid, and our coolest kid and scariest guy. And we did those costume contests, and we'd give, I don't remember what we did, $300 or $500 or something. Oh, but I wanted to finish that. I'm sorry I got sidetracked, Smitty. One of the things that we did in Cage Rage that I would like to see other people do, and, you know, of all the goddamn things they copied off of me, they never copied the one that I was proudest of and I think mattered the most, which is that I would ask fighters in that local area, because if you're going to do a local show, you better have local fighters or you're not going to have anybody there. You know, contrary to popular belief, people don't come to events where they don't know somebody. So one of the things that I always did, though, was I would talk to fighters in that local town and I'd say, who do you know? You know, do you have a family, a kid, a guy who needs something that we can help with? And I did this privately, okay, so that's why nobody ever knew about it. One time, what the hell's that? I don't know what happened there.
Apologies.
Well, I'm sorry, man. We're running out of time at 10 o'clock here, Chad.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, I want people to know this one. Steal this from me. Take some time, go out, find somebody in the community where you're doing a show, find somebody who needs something in that community, and donate 10% of your profit to that.
Yep.
Because let everybody know that people in MMA care and that we're trying to do something different and that we want to build community first. Sorry, Smitty, I didn't mean to go on and on. It's just what I do.
No, you're good, man. You're good. I appreciate you coming on and talk about everything, man. Perm, are you still there?
I'm still here. And, Chad, I want to apologize for that. I had that music playing in the background, and when I reached the 2-hour mark, it automatically blasts everything, and I forgot about it, so I sincerely apologize about that. Fuck.
Of course, but I got to tell you, Perm, that wouldn't happen on the Joe Rogan Experience.
No, it wouldn't. Well, I aspire to that level, not necessarily Joe himself, but one of these days we'll be that big.
Absolutely. I've heard great things about you all. Sounds like you're growing leaps and bounds.
We try hard, man. And one last thing before you go, Chad. At the beginning, before we brought you live, you and I were talking just about future guests that may be possibly visiting the show. And I just want to say thank you very much for helping us out. We really tremendously appreciate it.
Oh, anything I can do for guys that have fought for me. You know, I think it's super important that promoters back the guys who fight for them and have fought for them. One of the things we always did in Cage Rage is we made sure that anybody who ever fought for us has a permanent ticket into every show. And that was always good because we always wanted them to come back in. And what that means is guys that also came to our show like Mark Coleman, Wes Sims, Kevin Randleman, Dan Severin, Rich Franklin, on and on and on. All Strasser, all those guys came. Ron Faircloth, Pat O'Malley, you know, all the Wisniewski crew from Duneland Valley to do. All those guys came to Cage Rage. They all started there. Miguel Torres just did his comeback last night. He started in Cage Rage, you know. All those guys did. And, you know, we always had an open policy of bringing them back in anytime they wanted. And so I get phone calls all the time and messages and emails and stuff from fighters I've worked with through the years. And this morning I was talking, Wes Sims called me, and I told him about your show, and he said, yeah, man, put me on. I'll come in. Wes is making a big comeback, and you want to talk about character and story, Wes has got it tenfold. So, you know, the stories are what matters.
I've met Wes a couple of times, and he's quite the character.
He's great.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Chad, we've got to get on down the road, my man. For myself, Smitty, my co-host Vic Nasty hanging in there, and everybody listening tonight, dude, just again want to say thank you. I hope we haven't kept you up past your bedtime tonight, man.
No such thing. Hey, peace be upon you. Namaste, guys.
Thanks, right Chad. On, man. Be well. Later.